Welcome to the Chai Academy, being broadcast live from the Chai Center. This is Rabbi Sachs, your teacher for the next half hour. So we've been going through personalities, fascinating Jewish personalities, and yesterday we discussed the last class, Menachem Mendel Beilis, the last blood libel to ever have happened in this world, happened with him. And today, we're actually going to go back in time, and we're going to talk about Benjamin Disraeli, or Benjamin Disraeli. So it depends how he actually changed the spelling of his name. So fascinating fellow, and the story behind him is amazing. First of all, he was prime minister of the British Commonwealth twice, and he was the only Jewish person to do so. And so he was born in 1804, and he became, prime minister in 1860 or something like that, 1864, 1868. Since then, there's never been a known Jewish person to serve as prime minister. And so he was the only one. He was a conservative. He was a staunch, the term, the Tory party, was actually, they say, coined by him or coined because of him, etc. Fascinating story with him, with his father. So his father is the name of Isaac Disraeli, and his father was the son of Benjamin Disraeli. So the prime minister, and the famous prime minister, was named after his grandfather. So Isaac Disraeli was a member of the Bevis Marks Synagogue, still in existence today. The Bevis Marks Synagogue is full of wealthy people, and it's extremely old, and it has rich history. And in fact, I visited there a couple of years ago. I went to the Bevis Marks Synagogue, and they have the seat. This is where Lord Baron Rothschild, and this is where Moses Montefiore's seat has a ribbon around it, where they don't let people sit. But it's an antique synagogue, and there's a lot of rich history. And I took a tour, and we actually prayed there. Anyway, so the story with his father actually helped him become prime minister. It's such a weird story. It's such a fascinating story. So his father, like his grandfather, were both members of Bevis Marks Synagogue. They weren't religious people, but they belonged to this synagogue, and it was a prestigious synagogue. And one day, his Isaac Disraeli, which is Benjamin's father, the prime minister's father, it was announced that he is being invited to become the warden of the synagogue, a great honor. By the way, the cost of membership for that synagogue at that time was £10 per annum, and then at the end of his life it was like £22 per year. So so his father was asked to be the warden of the synagogue, to which he refused. He goes, "Now you ask me? You should have asked me years ago." So he sent a letter to say that he is refusing to be the warden of the synagogue, to which in the synagogue's bylaws, because he declined to be a warden of the synagogue, they fined him £40, astronomical amount of money, £40. To which he said, "I refuse to pay." He says, "I don't think it's fair that you should have asked me years ago, and now you're fining me." So he left the synagogue, and he refused to pay the fine. But he didn't just leave the synagogue. He didn't just leave. He took his family, not himself, and he took his 4 kids, Isaac's 4 kids. One of them was the Prime Minister of England, and he baptized them. He converted them to Christianity, to the Church of England. And this is all because of a fight over money in a synagogue. So clearly he wasn't involved religiously, and clearly, but to do that was just unthinkable. So the Disraeli family came. Their origins were from Italy, Portugal, and they were Sephardim for the most part. Had a little bit of Roman, Italkim, Ashkenazi blood, but for the most part they were Sephardim. And Benjamin Disraeli, the Prime Minister, was born and bred in England, as was Isaac, his father. And after this fight, so he took his kids and no more, cut off all connections with the synagogue, and he was told by a friend, an author, Sharon Turner, they said to him, it's not good to bring up your child with no religion. Pick, choose. Right? Yeah, and it's not good to have both religions, so choose, which is probably an accurate statement. Unfortunately, he as a Jew chose to have their children baptized. And so Benjamin Disraeli, the Prime Minister, eventual Prime Minister, was baptized at the age of 12. And it was because, they say, that because he was baptized, and that allowed him to actually become a prime minister, because there was rules, as we discussed it with Chaim Solomon. There was a law that if you wanted to be a member of parliament, and the law was also in the United States, which Chaim Solomon beat. But there was a law that in order to be a part of parliament, you had to take an oath of loyalty to the church. It was both in England and the United States. He could never have become prime minister, even though there was a Jewish parliamentarian, but he never could have really gone anywhere. He was viewed as a Christian, not as a Jew. And so it was ironically because of that, because the Jewish Relief Act was not passed yet. The Jewish Relief Act was the ability to not have to give up your Judaism in order to become a member of parliament. So, by the way, talk about, Jews get angry at synagogues all the time. Jews get angry at rabbis all the time. Jews get angry at me, for that matter. And I always share with them this thought when they get angry at me. And they say, I rescind my membership, or I'm mad, I'm not coming, or I'm going to wait till a little grass grows. And it's stupid, it's trivial stuff for the most part. And sometimes I'm wrong, sometimes they're wrong, right? I always say, do not let your connection with a rabbi or with me sever your connection with God. It's ridiculous. You're angry at a mortal, so therefore you're angry at God. It doesn't make any sense, right? I'm fallible, and anyway. So in this case, it was an argument over money. So he got into politics, but let's talk about before he went into politics. As a kid, he went to private school, and he actually went to a Christian private school way before he was converted. Yeah, so as I said, once again, the Disraelis were not religious people. So he went to and he was actually always lamented that he didn't go to a fancy private Christian school. His brothers did, but he didn't. And he always said, if I did, I would have had more, I would have been more upper crust. In fact, Benjamin Disraeli always spoke about his father's lineage, how he's related to this one, related to that one, He wouldn't speak about his mother's lineage because he felt that that was not posh enough, that was not higher echelons, etc. He apprenticed at a law school, and that's where he actually met his father-in-law. His father-in-law, Mr. Mabel, was a partner at this law firm where he was apprenticing, and his future father-in-law was friendly with Isaac Disraeli, and they both spoke that maybe he should get married and get married to Mabel's daughter. Anyway, the law school he didn't last, and he quit to become a barrister. A barrister is interesting. A barrister is you're a lawyer, where you're a corporate lawyer, or you're a barrister, which is a lawyer for the courts. It's a different degree. That's basically more of a showman, and you quick on your feet. So he was a trial lawyer, but he didn't make it there also. So he decided that he's going to go into politics. And before he got into politics, he actually became an author. He wrote a couple of books, and he was probably known for his books. He was probably known in Europe, not England. He was probably known in Europe more for his books than his politics, until he became a prime minister. But so he wrote different books, and eventually he went into investing into the mining business, because at that point the Spanish were losing their control over South America, and there was great opportunities to be had, and so he went into the mining. He made a little money, and then he lost money, and then he dedicated his time. He lost 7,000 pounds, which is astronomical back then. And he had a lot of debts. For the most part, he had a lot of debts all his life. And he went into writing, and then he went into politics. So politics, he was a radical at first. He was radical. He wasn't fit to be in the Conservative Party, he hated the Liberal Party, the Labour Party, and he was more aligned with the Conservative Party, but he was too radical. And then eventually, after a couple of stints and losing elections, he became a part of the Conservative movement. He ended up marrying the wife of a fellow member of Parliament who actually died. Her name was Mary Lewis. And he married her. By the way, he wasn't the most loyal person to his wife. I mean, there's stories about him that he was in Europe and he got an STD, and his brother-in-law died of something else, and he got an STD, and there was a disaster trip to Europe, which actually made him quit law school. But so he married this Mary Lewin, and who was very, very wealthy, and people were often skeptical that he married her for her money. They were married for 30 years. She actually said that while it's true that Dizzy, she called him Dizzy, Disraeli, while it's true that Dizzy married me initially for my money, if he would marry me again, this time it would be for love. He was a member of Parliament, and at the time when Lord Derby was the Prime Minister, he retired due to illness. So he became Prime Minister. Benjamin Disraeli, he was the, I forget, part of the Treasury. What do they call it? The Exchequer or something? But he was part of the Treasury, a very high position, so he became Prime Minister. However, so it wasn't an election, because Lord Derby resigned, he became Prime Minister. Shortly thereafter, there was elections, and he lost. He lost to his predecessor Gladworth, and eventually Gladworth became Prime Minister again and again. He was a flaming Labour liberal person, and for 6 years he became the opposition party, until 6 years later he was elected now Prime Minister. When he was elected Prime Minister, he became very friendly with Queen Victoria. Queen Victoria and him were very tight, more so than any other prime minister. And and she was like queen for 75 years or something. His major accomplishments, there were two major accomplishments. I mean, it was more, but major. One of them is he acquired ownership. Britain acquired ownership of the Suez Canal. So the Suez Canal was owned by 44% was owned by the Egyptians, and some was small investments, and Russia owned the others, and he saw that Egypt was needed money, and the builder needed money, and they wanted to put tolls on the Suez Canal, and because of the need for money, he actually brokered a deal where England would buy the Suez Canal. Now, he wanted it because, first of all, it was mainly used by British ships. The canal, once again, saved weeks off of travel because you can cut through the Suez Canal. You didn't have to go all the way around to Europe, in order or Africa, for that matter, to get into Africa and Asia. And it was considered a brilliant move because it kept Russia at bay, because Russia could have caused a blockade. And Britain now owned a major stake in the Suez Canal. The other thing that he was known for was fighting the Russians. The Russians were considered an arch enemy of England, just like I guess they were during the Cold War, right? So they had their own Cold War. And he actually made some strategic moves to put the Russians at bay. He was very wise in that respect. So those were actually the highlights of his career. And so he was prime minister, and towards the tail end of him being prime minister for the second time, he got sick. And because he got sick, he was coming late to things, and there were certain things, as you know, the British are very, very inflexible. They're very they lived on protocol and pomp, circumstance, and they didn't tolerate tardiness. And he was sick. He had gout. He had gastro issues. His eyesight was becoming. At some point, he resigned, just like his predecessor, Lord Derby. He resigned. But Queen Victoria was furious at him for resigning. She says, just stick it out. And he was resigning, and at that time, Britain was going through a whole procedural, electoral, redistribution. So no longer could small little villages vote; they had to be part of a larger town, etc. And anyway, the bottom line is the Tories got beaten badly when he resigned. They lost. They were behind by about 50 seats. So Queen Victoria was actually furious at him. He got very sick and he was bedridden, and Queen Victoria actually sent him a letter. He couldn't read it. It was read to him. He did pass, and a private funeral was held for him, which once again, because of the pomp and circumstance, the Queen Victoria did not come. Actually, they say that Queen Elizabeth, the current Queen Elizabeth II, was the first queen to attend a funeral. She did of Winston Churchill. But before then, no monarch had ever gone to a funeral of a politician. So she went 4 days later, and she placed flowers at his grave. He was buried in the Church of St. Michael, together with his wife, and together with his supporter. I actually don't remember the supporter's name, but she had paid up his debts, because he was heavily in debt, even as a politician, and it was somewhat of an Achilles heel. And the prime minister who took him over, who was before him, Gladworth, used to bring it up as an argument why he should not be prime minister. He owed money, susceptible to bribery, etc., etc. And she paid up his debts, and she was actually buried in the same vault as Benjamin Disraeli, his wife Mary, and this woman, which is interesting. And you can visit it if you care to do so in the Church of Saint Michael. He never renounced his Judaism. He never baptized himself. For whatever reason, based on the advice, he baptized his. No, I'm sorry. That was his father. He was baptized. He was. I apologize for that. His father would never renounce Judaism, but he did baptize his 4 kids. Benjamin, one of his kids was Naphtali, for crying out loud. Queen Victoria, actually, when he died, because he had no children, Queen Victoria wanted to honor and make lordships out of his siblings. I don't know if that ever happened. Queen Victoria wanted to knight him, but he didn't want to leave the House of Commons to go to the House of Lords. He goes, I don't want to go. I only know politics. I don't want to be this House of Lords. So he became the Earl of this, Earl of that, but I don't know if he became a full lord. When he died, they honored him with a couple of different monuments. One monument I do remember is in Parliament, in the Houses of Parliament. There's a monument to him. So yes, he was a Jew, because, and this is I guess part of the Torah part of the lesson. So even though he was baptized, in the eyes of Judaism, you have a Jewish soul. When you have a Jewish soul, you can baptize, you can convert, you can this and that and the other. Excuse me. You could never ever get rid of that Jewish soul. So technically he was still a Jew. And so yes, while others viewed him as a Christian, we never did. Jews never did. Jews always viewed him as we viewed him strictly as a Jew, and they were proud the fact that he was the prime minister not once, but twice. Benjamin Disraeli was his name. He had no children, and he passed away in his 70s, I believe, and he did a lot of good things, and he accomplished a lot as a politician. Once again, very, very conservative. Hated the Russians, hated labor, hated the liberals, hated them. You can Google him. He looked like, to me, he looked like a typical British politician, aristocrat, which he wanted to look like. He actually, to me, it looked like Thomas Cromwell, but he wanted to look the part, and he did look the part. He assimilated quite well. Very interesting to note that there was a period of time where anti-Semitism was not. While the Brits in the 1200s, and Thomas Cromwell, while the Brits did, exile the Jews, when they came back, anti-Semitism was at a minimum. It really, at that point of time, it got worse later, but at that point of time, so he probably, and to prove it, a member of Parliament was a Jew. He probably could have been prime minister, but they did say it helped him. Just as an interesting tidbit. All right, God bless. Any questions you can ask here or rabbi@thechaicenter.com, and thou shalt have a great day.